Catch the NBA playoffs on Sling TV, the most flexible live TV streaming service, putting consumers in control to watch games their way with flexible subscriptions. Want to catch one game or a full series on ESPN? Grab a 1, 3, or 7-day pass. If you want to catch as many games as possible, get a monthly subscription with our ABC, NBC, and ESPN combo package. Either way, Sling lets you watch the playoffs your way with no long-term contracts. Learn more at sling.com.
Rise up! Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals. Joining me in episode 784 is my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, Arizona, the SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and we have our second show of the week. Technically, it's our third edition of the show this week, as we had a bonus episode that Howard Balzer had in an interview with Jeremiah Love. That episode is already up. We are now part of the Believe Network. That's a new change for us. So you will sometimes. Our good friend Blake Murphy. Sometimes his shows will give you bonus episodes on this feed, but we're part of the Believe Network, the football podcast network, and we're here to keep talking, doing what we've done for 13 years. For 13 years, it's still that. But in this episode of the show, Seth, we're going to talk that the Cardinals are in OTAs, and I guess the only story right now is, and we'll probably talk more next week. We'll focus on Josh Sweat, but we want to talk about Jacoby Brissett, who has yet to show up for the voluntary part of the offseason program so far, as he is seeking a new contract. We've talked a little bit about this before, Seth, but now we're continuing. We're getting further into the offseason program. We're into OTAs. He still hasn't done any practice reps. And I know Mike LaFleur is saying all the right things. It's voluntary. Jacoby's been in the league a decade. There isn't anything they're doing that he hasn't done and whatnot. What do you think the level of concern is for the coaching staff, knowing that Jacoby Brissett, the guy they've been counting on to at least start the year as their starter, to not be in the building, albeit in the voluntary part of the offseason?
Well, it's funny because I talked about it, I think, with you guys in text, and LaFleur's definitely, not making it a big deal, right? Like, he can't either, because he can't make it for the NFLPA. They'll get involved if he insinuates that he wants Brissett there and expects him to be there. Then they get in trouble. Yeah, but the reality is he said more than enough, and what I mean by that is if you go back and you look at his conversation about the rookie install, that told you everything that Mike LaFleur is thinking. And what Mike LaFleur is thinking is that this is a team that, after a two-year stretch where they really dropped the penalties, especially the 24 season with Kyler and Petzing, and, everything was starting to, it seemed, click pretty well. They were, again, one of the most penalized teams in the NFL, especially pre-snap. And I know people will, look at it and go, oh, well, he's a veteran and this and that. But LaFleur said it kind of loud and clear to me. Like, we spent a week just going over the pre-snap install packages with the veterans and the rookies in separate camps. That's telling you what his thought process is. I need the guy that whether LaFleur agrees with it or not, is being labeled as the starter, the incumbent to this team. And he's not there. The process is, obviously, like you said, he can't say he needs to be there. But he can definitely make comments like that where he's saying, we spent the veterans spent a week doing pre-snap alignments and making sure that we clean up all the pre-snap stuff. If you don't think that means something, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you can't say like, oh, it's no big deal. The starting quarterback's not here. And oh, by the way, we spent a week with the veterans getting all our pre-snap stuff done. So we cut out the pre-snap penalties that hampered us last year. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. They were a very I don't want to say poorly coached, but I guess we can say poorly coached, right? Like, Jonathan Gannon's not a head coach anymore.
They fired the coach, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they were a very poorly coached team last year in terms of penalties, and that is something that we're going to continue to see be an important process for them to fix. And the reality of it is, it's hard to fix in an off season, right? But I understand what the conversation is, because you're trying to fix pre-snap penalties. And pre-snap penalties are really just about discipline, right? Like, there's a difference between, physical errors and mental errors, and LaFleur and his offense wants to clean up the mental errors and the pre-snap penalties. And then, something we have to address, Jess, and a reality, whether or not people want to face it is, another conversation. But there is unquestioned pressure on Mike LaFleur, who in his one chance to be an offensive coordinator failed spectacularly. We can say whatever we want about the Jets, but, I mean, the Cardinals are basically the Jets just on the West Coast, right? Like, so LaFleur in his one season or 2 seasons as OC for the Jets, where he was in charge of the offense, was 28th and 29th in points and 26th and 25th in yards. Those are things that he's going to want to rectify and he's going to want to fix. And so that all starts with getting this stuff down, right? Like the pre-snap stuff, that there are not these penalties and they're not having the same type of issues that they had under Gannon and Drew Petzing and the ilk. And I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that it's okay for the starting quarterback to be missing when those are, some of the key points of emphasis that they're trying to make right now after what was, a miserable season last year.
Yes, and here's another important thing, especially we want to point out to fans, for those who in 2022 were upset with Kyler Murray's absence from the offseason program when he was in his contract dispute. Never mind, this is a common thing that people with contract disputes do, is they set out the voluntary part of the offseason. In 2022, what was the reaction of Cardinals fans when Kyler Murray was away from the team? And mind you, he had spent multiple years in the same offense and the same coaching staff. People were very unhappy. People are still to this day unhappy about Kyler Murray's offseason decision with the contract. And ultimately, there are plenty of people who put what happened in 2022 firmly on Kyler's shoulders in terms of his decisions of not being with the team during the offseason program. Now, this is a common thing. It is the voluntary part of the offseason, but there is a different context. This is, yes, he's a veteran quarterback. He hasn't started a ton of games in the league. He's never played in this specific offense, and it is a new coaching staff. And you do have some new offensive linemen. But the difference is, obviously, Kyler was set to get paid. I'm kind of interested in the contract dispute part of this because Brissett has kind of made it clear that through Ian Rappaport that he wants to be paid like a starter. He would like a multi-year deal. I don't know if he'll get that. And he currently is due to make $4.9 million in salary, and then he has roster bonuses per game active up to $510,000. So it's about $5.4 million he is due to make in 2026. Only $1.6 million of which is guaranteed. And so he wants to be paid like a starting quarterback. The question is, Seth, is I have for you. I kind of have a number in my head, which I think he's shooting for. How much do you think he's asking for? Is he asking for just a little extra? Or do you think, as he's expected to start the season as a starter, that he wants actual starting quarterback money?
I'm looking at the salaries from the, planned or scheduled guys that are supposed to be the starters this year, right? And you look at the 2026 contract and things of that nature and whatnot. And it's interesting, man. You've got a group that I would look at, and I get that some of them are rookies and things of that nature, but you've got a group that I would look at, and I would say he probably wants to be in the Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones group, which is between $15.5 and $19.2 million. And that's where the questions come in, because if you look at everything else, Jess, Bryce Young's $12 million, CJ Stroud's $11.5, Cam Ward's $11.1, Anthony Richardson's $10.8, Caleb Williams $10.8, Jaden Daniels $10.3, Drake May just under $10, and then Jacoby Brissett.
Those are still rookie
right.
numbers, of course, but.
And then Jacoby Brissett at 9.1. There's not another starting quarterback in the NFL that's making less than Jacoby. But where would you slot him in the quarterback hierarchy of getting paid? Is a $6 million bump what I mean would let's call it 6.3 for easy math to get him, level with Aaron Rodgers? Is that going to be enough? Like, genuinely, do you think that would be enough for him?
That's a really good question, and I would dare say that probably what he is looking like 15 million, I think, is the number that I think he has in mind, but not 15 million in cap hit. I think he would like 15 million in in money this year, which would be about $10 million, because he's going to make 5.4. We're looking at potentially $10 million this year, and he wants a multi-year deal too. That's what he wants. So that was something that Ian Rappaport said initially. That hasn't been mentioned again. But
and Jess, let's be honest about this. He's, like you said, so his cap number is 9.9, his cash number is 5.4. So you're talking $10 million to play this year, but also his leverage in this is your only other quarterback on the roster is Carson Beck in 2027. So what's your plan? Right? Yeah. Like if he's saying like, hey, I'll do 2 years, 30 million, 20 of it guaranteed, basically, like you said, gets about, or call it 25 million, right? 2 years, 25 million, basically 10 extra on top of what he's owed this year, and then 15 next year. And he's like, I'll take, I don't know, 15 guaranteed. So he's going to get 10 this year, and then he'll be on the books for 5 next year. Like, the Cardinals are basically saying, no, we're going to go with Carson Beck and or a rookie and or something. I mean, that genuinely is what the problem is. And that was one of the things that you and I talked about in all of this, right? From the beginning, from the jump of moving on from Kyler, is that if you didn't get a Malik Willis in the offseason for 3 years or even 2 years, right? 2 years really guaranteed money-ish. I mean, you're literally you're either hoping that a third-round rookie is the answer, or you're hoping that a guy that's 20 and 45, I think. I'll double check. But 20 and
45? 20 and 45.
Yeah, 20 and 45, including 2 and 15 in his last 17 starts. So he was 18 and 28 at one point, Jess. Or 18 and 30 at one point.
He was Gardner Minshew, because Gardner Minshew right now is 17 and 30 in his career as a starter.
Right. And so, I mean, both sides, can both sides be right and wrong? Like,
but I think 100% that's the case. I mean, we've said, I don't know how many times on this show, we support players trying to get paid. That's what they do. And so this is 100% a move that Brissett should do, because he probably isn't getting another starting job after, like, he's in his 30s. He's not getting another starting opportunity after this year. Like,
and if things continue on the track, and we're not saying another 1-11, because hopefully the Cardinals would pull the plug before then, but like, even if he's 2 and 8, and then they move on, like, Brissett would have to go right around 500 to justify getting another starting job. I mean, it's really difficult to only win 2 games in the NFL.
And of course, what do we expect from this Cardinals team? No matter who's playing quarterback, we expect a bad year. So he needs to cash this in. He's entering the season an expected starter. He should cash in. That doesn't mean the Cardinals should just acquiesce and give him his money because of that. Now, here are some numbers, and actually, let's move on to that. Coming up next on the Res of Sierra podcast, episode Cardinals Talk on the One. Let's talk about what we think the Cardinals will and should do. That's coming up next on Res of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Red podcast, the Bizarre Cardinals talk on the web. We're talking about Jacoby Brissett. And he should, as we explained, he should be looking for more money. This is the last opportunity he's going to have to get starter money. And he's never, like, the last time he got a 1-year, $10 million deal from Washington when he went to the then football team. And he was competing with Sam Howell and eventually was not. He ended up being the backup and starting a few games there. But he signed with New England knowing he was going to be eventually that he was a starter in transition to backup. He signed with the Cardinals 100% knowing he was a backup. And so he got the 2-year, 12-something million. And now this is the only chance he's going to have to cash in. And so it 100% makes sense. A starting quarterback. But here's the thing. The Cardinals set themselves up for this year to be in a position. So as much as they liked Jacoby Brissett as a starter, Jacoby, unfortunately, really has no leverage at all because they signed a guy in Gardner Minshew who is essentially the same quarterback. Like you said, at one point, Brissett was 18-30. Minshew is 17-30 in his career. He has starting experience. He's getting paid a little bit more than Brissett this offseason. And when he signed, we joked in our group text how, watch Brissett hold out. 100% he did. Technically it's not a holdout. Technically it's not a holdout because it's voluntary, but we'll see what happens when minicamp comes around. Here's the thing. You've got a guy who is basically the same quarterback in terms of production and winning in Minshew. And they drafted a kid who's got vast starting experience in college who in another situation, like, it's not crazy to think that he's going to start at some point or could start the season as the starting quarterback. Doesn't mean he's going to be good, but Beck's experience and his pedigree lend itself to being someone who could start in week 1 or at least be kind of on the trajectory that Tyler Shuck was last year. He drafted a round later, but Tyler Shuck, who started the season on the bench but eventually came in and did that, they have that in Carson Beck. And so the Cardinals, honestly, they can play hardball because what are they going to do? Like, honestly, what are they going to do without Brissett? It's not like we viewed, like, assuming Brissett is the starting quarterback, we expect them to win 1, maybe 2 games in the first 10 games of the season. And so,
right,
like,
and
they can do the same thing with Minshew or Beck and not have to pay anybody else.
Well, and that's just it. I remember a lot of people, going through the season being like, "Oh, Jacoby gives them the best chance to win," and I was like, "Win what?" Like, that was always my question. It was like, what are they trying to win that he gives them the best chance to? Because it's not football games. And there's no, other thing that we need to look at than, they played the Seahawks and were down 35-0 in the second quarter, and they lost on a last-second field goal 3 or 4 weeks earlier. Like, I get it. A loss is a loss is a loss, but like being in the game actually meant something. And so if Jacoby had gone 4-7 or 4-8, I guess technically, right? Maybe this holds a little more water. But when you're talking about a guy that was below league average in efficiency, I think he was 26 overall in efficiency. When you're talking about a guy that a vast majority of his stats came in times when the Cardinals were down 17 plus points. And again, think about this, Jess. We have to go to 17 plus because that's technically 3 scores, right? Like
that Sigmund Bloom put this out there, and I'm sure we've mentioned it before. I think Seth's talked about it before, but here were his numbers in 2025 when the Cardinals were down 3 scores, 17 plus more points. He had 2,400 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and he put that side by side with his stats in 2022 when he played for the Cleveland Browns, and it was nearly identical. He had 2,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. And so 9 of his 23 touchdown passes that he had last season came when they were down by 3 scores or more. And it was exciting. I will say this. And AQ Shipley, who knows ball, it did feel this way, is that the moment Jacoby was put into the lineup, whether it was replacing Kyler because of injury, holding his place, or as the guy, that they started throwing the ball down the field. We have documented over the course of the year how things changed strategically when Brissett was in the game. And yes, they started throwing the ball down the field more, but the results were no better. And, well, while they got volume numbers for both Brissett, for Trey McBride, for Michael Wilson, the team was vastly worse. And they also stopped trying to run the ball, and partially because of injuries, but there was no attempt to run the ball at that point. And so it was, F it, we're throwing the ball down the field. And that was really kind of their best hope. Drew Petzing's play calling and philosophy changed once it was Jacoby and not Kyler in the lineup. But so, yeah, that's what you look at is statistically, you look at it like, oh, he had a really good year. Michael Wilson had a career year. Trey McBride had a record-setting year. They won one game. And the second that Brissett was named the guy and not just holding a place for Carly, they didn't win again. There were other factors. But if you are the Cardinals, and we know here's the thing, and the Cardinals are not historically an organization that's just going to take care of their guys because they're not a team historically who's ever like, well, let's just pay you a little more because. Like, there's one instance that we had that, and that was Budda Baker a couple of years ago. But Budda Baker, he's one of the greatest Cardinals ever, and a guy they have long-term plans. They would ideally, Budda Baker's going to be another Larry Fitzgerald, never plays for any other team. Brissett's not that guy, and so like. I don't see them doing anything more than maybe adding guarantees to his salary, basically locking him in for the roster, and adding some incentives that he could reach to earn more money as the starter, which, if we also know historically, he's going to get benched at some point, and he's not going to hit those statistical marks. And so he'll still end up getting paid just a little bit more, but that's how I see this playing out. That they're gonna take that salary and maybe fully guarantee it. Okay, $4.9 million fully guaranteed salary because they know that he's going to be on the roster, and then add markers statistically in terms of touchdown passes and games started, where he can add money to his plate.
Well, and my other question becomes like, as much as we want or assume, I guess is the better way to put it, assume that he will, be on the roster for the full season. Is there a scenario where, like, I mean, he's holding out. I know it's voluntary, but he's holding out. He's looking for more money. And then is there a scenario where he gets benched and he's like, I want to be a free agent so I can go play somewhere else? Like, I was thinking about that too, right? You look at this idea that a guy is just good, good to go, and is okay with being benched. After last year when he made the comment like, oh, I'm not like something to the extent of like, I'm not worried about wins and losses, I'm on the field or something like that. Like it does make you wonder, like, if they go to Carson Beck, because I mean, Jess, they're going to have to be. I mean, how do you hold Beck off the field? It would have to be like they'd have to have a winning record, right? Like even if you're somehow after 10 games 3-7, you're moving on at that point, right? Like
that's what happens with every bad team who has a young quarterback coming in. That was the Ryan Lindley move of 2012. They moved on to Ryan Lindley because, well, we might as well see what he has.
Right. And so like that's where my question comes in. And so I look at it and I say, this is a scenario where it's going to get done. Like you said, it's going to happen. It's probably going to be right around that 15 million mark. But that's not the end of it to me, because I just don't see a way that he is going to be, that Brissett is going to be happy when he gets replaced, because he's going to get replaced unless he does the one thing he hasn't done in his last two stops, and that's actually win football games.
Correct. Yeah, if I had to imagine, so do you see them upping his actual salary ultimately?
I mean, that's the 10 million, right? Like they're going to have to up it to, like you said, probably right around like low end starter money. Like we said, it's not going to be commensurate to the rookies, but you know, the Aaron Rodgers is the low end at 15.5. And my question is, like, is Jacoby happy with that, or is he going to push to be like, oh, I should be compensated like Daniel Jones?
Yeah, or Malik Willis, right?
Right.
Yeah, and if that's the case, like, here's the part with the Cardinals: they can play hardball 100%. They can. So while the report is that they're friendly to the idea of doing the deal, I think they are friendly to adding incentives and maybe some guarantees. I wonder how this is going to play out. Like, honestly, maybe we should have waited to talk about, like, I guess we can talk about it again in minicamp if he hasn't shown up. But this is the weirdest quarterback holdout that I think we've seen. This might be, and I said it in the last show, this might be the most interesting thing that Jacoby Brissett's done in his entire career, right?
Right.
He is, the Cardinals right now have the least interesting quarterback room. Jacoby Brissett as a starting quarterback makes it's the least interesting starting quarterback situation in the NFL, because you know he's not the future, and you know that in the present there's not much of a chance of winning. There's nothing he does that's exciting. Now, he did put up volume numbers last year, and maybe you can add to that, but frankly, when it comes to the rest of the NFL, there's nothing interesting about Jacoby Brissett to put him on television or anything like that. But him holding out, this is the most interesting thing that he's done in his entire career. And if he can get a little bit more money, good for him. I just don't see how this plays. I don't see how this is going to play out well for Brissett, period, this year.
Right. And that's just it. Like, it just, I think it's the realization that he's at kind of the end. Like, this is the last time he's going to be able to get any type of large contract in the guaranteed, 15 millions. So like, he's trying to cash in before it's over. And I'm not, I'm not spiteful for that. It makes sense. And you have to do what's best for you and what you think is best for your present. The problem just becomes, it's just, if there was anything in there about like him winning games, that's kind of where you want it to be, right? You're like, hey, we'll be happy to give you more money if you can actually win some football games. Because like you said, you can do the same thing with Gardner Minshew. You probably should. I mean, our buddy Coxmas on Twitter said it. Like, why? Like, at this point, just start Beck.
Really, like you're not going to do worse with Beck unless you think you're going to ruin him as a prospect. If you think that putting him on the field early will actually hurt him in his development, yeah, honestly. But you can't say that today because the coach is still trying to say, hey, we're going to put the best players on the field and not the best situation. You have to let them compete. And so it makes sense that I still think the Cardinals kind of messed this up by leaking that Jacoby was going to be the starter when it should have been.
And
you should have been said that we signed Gardner Minshew. Like, oh, we're going to have a competition quarterback. The best player's going to start. Boom, easy.
But dude, they've been doing. I mean, it's the same thing. And I know we're going to talk about it next week, but it's the same thing with the Josh Sweat stuff. Like, they utilize their relationship with Arizona sports, and this is not a shot at Arizona sports whatsoever. Like, if you get this information, you have to share it. It is what it is. But like, they utilize their relationship with Arizona sports to basically, like, oh, Josh Sweat's holding out. Not at OTAs, and the reality was, right, like it shouldn't have been a big deal, but the reality was, like, Sweat wasn't at OTAs last year. So why would this even come up? Like, theoretically, it's the same defense. You're running it back with the same DC, different starters in Roy Lopez and I guess Rabbit or Andrew Wingard. But outside of that, you're basically running it back with the same unit. So why does it matter if Sweat's there or not? But there, it seems like there's something slightly more to it. So let's leak it to 98.7. Let's have them put it out there so, like, we can get the feedback of how they did it with the Kyler injury benching. They did it with the Jacoby, the starter during the season. They did it with the Jacoby, they did it with the Jonathan Gannon's going to be retained and the uproar about that. Like, it's wild to see how this organization works, because it's unlike anything we've seen anywhere else in the NFL.
Got to test the waters, but we'll see how this plays out. OTAs are going on for another 2 weeks. They have mandatory minicamp from June 8th to 10th. We'll see if he shows up, and if he shows up, if he participates, because there's also the hold in that you can do where you show up and you say, yeah, no, I have a sore hamstring. I have a tired back. I'm having shoulder fatigue. And so we'll see how that goes. Or just simply saying, hey, I'm not going to go on the field. I'm here so I don't get fined. I'm just here so I don't get fined, and go from there. But until then, that'll wrap up this edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast episode, Cardinals Talk on the Web. We'll have more next week, talking about off-season content. Maybe there'll be news of something until then. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Rise